Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Was your dogma run over by your karma? I just wanted to start that way because I like that joke. I think it's funny. Today we're going to talk about New Age Dogma. And before we talk about it, I want to get the relevance of what the word dogma means out up front, so we have something to base our thoughts from. Dogma is incontrovertible truth that a religion holds on to, and it bases all of its traditions and ceremonies on. And the other one is Dharma, and I wanted to bring Dharma out too. Dharma is universal truth that we all hold true to across all religions. So you've got Dharma being the universal, and dogma being the very specific, incontrovertible truths that are specific to a religion and the traditions and ceremonies that come from it. And this topic is going to be really interesting, and we're going to talk about this topic today with my good friend, the lovely Tamara Zoner. Hello, Tamara Zoner. How are you?
Hello, John Davis. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. We both are halfway vaccinated, and
right.
Life is good. And I have a lovely mug of coffee in front of me.
As do I.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So dogma. It's a very interesting thing, and I really find the fascination with the New Age dogmas that are being created. And to give an example that I always see is people. Like, for instance, some people very much believe in their crystals or their smudging with sage and all those things. And to me, those are all, there's a belief behind that they see as incontrovertible, and they have to do those traditions and ceremonies as part of their belief system. And so I often wonder whether we sometimes get lost in the ceremonies and traditions of dogma rather than the messages of spirituality. What's your thought?
As usual, I hadn't considered that. But now that you've mentioned it, yes, rituals, I love rituals, and I love the ways that we celebrate certain things or open a practice, to open a practice of meditation by lighting a candle and whatnot. And yes, I agree that if you're so caught up in the ceremony of it, that's more important than the connection that you're experiencing with the God of your understanding, then you're actually losing something if that becomes more important than that deeper connection.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned meditation. I find meditation really interesting because in some religions, meditation is part of their dogma. Mm-hmm. It's part of their deep belief. Buddhism and Hinduism, they believe that meditation is a way to enlightenment. And it becomes a spiritual practice and tradition. And some people, they do fire meditations with candles, or they do breathing meditation. So they have a very specific tradition and ceremony that they go about with their meditation as well. So I guess the question I have to ask is meditation dropped into the category of dogma as a whole, or is meditation something above dogma?
Personally, I think that it's above dogma. It's not required for most spiritual practices, and you don't even have to be a spiritual person to reap the benefits of meditation if you're simply using it for, calming and clearing your mind and having a healthier body. So I think it can be completely separate. And it's also like an amazing way to connect spiritually, of course. So I have a question with something you said. Is the goal of meditation for, say, a Buddhist enlightenment, or is enlightenment simply a lovely outcome?
Very, very good question. The goal of meditation literally is to create a state where enlightenment is possible. Mm-hmm. So you're creating a state, a feeling, a vibration. And the interesting thing to me is, I've been meditating for almost 30 years. It's been something I've been doing for most of my life. And It's interesting. I can still say most of my life. Pretty soon I won't be able to say that it'll be half my life. I can still say most now, though.
Hang on to that. Hang on to that.
I'll be 57 in a few weeks. So there you go. The interesting thing to me when I look at meditation in general and the whole concept of meditation, for me, when I first started meditating, it was all about having a guided meditation, having somebody to listen to, or music to listen to, or things to do. And then over time, it came to be a breathing meditation. And now my meditations are very different than the way they used to be. And they don't actually follow the traditions of transcendental meditation or any of those practices, because those other practices led me to a place where I got to the state of meditation that they told me how to get to that feeling. Mm-hmm. But now when I go to meditate, I just close my eyes and like in seconds, I'm in that state. I just drop into the state. And I find that I can awaken that state walking through the day. Like mm-hmm. I'll walk into a building and I'll just awaken that state, and you'll see the room change. You'll see it literally actively change, So to me, it's no longer a dogmatic concept of my spirituality. It is really just a way of being in a sense. And I find the more I meditated, the smoother my life came. So mm-hmm. for me, it wasn't about incontrovertible truth based upon a religion. It was an experiential experience that to me just feels right. So to me, meditation is part of my Dharma. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because to me, it's a universal truth that for me, and universal and for me is contradictory, okay. But when I look at people who can calm their mind, who do calm their mind, they all have the same experience, no matter what religion they're in. Mm-hmm. No matter what religion they have this. Mm-hmm. So I look at it as a dharmatic sort of principle rather than a dogmatic principle, because of the fact that everybody under every religion has the same response, mm-hmm. typically.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So what do you think about the whole like burning sage before a ceremony or things of that nature?
Like I said, I like ceremony. And so if it's something that puts you in to a state where you're more receptive for the next step. For instance, I have a ritual at bedtime, right? I brush my teeth, floss my teeth, wash my face, maybe tweeze some stray eyebrows. Mm-hmm. And then and then my body knows like it's time for bed. So I'm receptive to sleep because that's the ritual that I've performed every night for 30 years. So I have even done it when I'm not in my right frame of mind, maybe a party weekend. Like I will wake up the next morning having done all of my rituals because it's so ingrained in me. So
habitually.
Yeah. And so I think that if you're using it because it assists you in becoming more receptive to a meditative state or a prayer state, or if you're a leader of some sort of spiritual circle and that helps you connect collectively, right? Then I think that's super valuable. And like, what if you go somewhere, you're staying in a hotel and you've forgotten your crystals or you've forgotten your sage? Can you still drop in to a meditative state or do a ceremony for yourself or prayer? Or does it not happen if you don't have those tools? No. So for me, I prefer to depend solely on my internal tools. And then if I have the external stuff, that's bonus, right? That's a bonus.
Right. The thing that I find really interesting about what you just said was the idea that they feel they need the practice to and the question that came to my head was is in true spirituality and finding out that path to something more, mm-hmm. is there a need for another thing to get you there, or is it totally an internal journey?
I think you know my answer, John.
Wow. Well, some of our listeners might not.
Well, it, for me, is definitely an internal journey. I mean, I have dabbled in all sorts of different spirituality. I have a broom I used when I went through a Wiccan phase. I have
Yeah.
crystals and stones on my altar, which is just a windowsill. I have a Buddha and a Black Panther because I also am interested in Native American wisdom and animal totems. I have another little statue. I have no idea where that's even from. I think I got it when I lived in Singapore, so I'm not sure. And all sorts of different spiritual texts. But if I go camping and I still want to meditate or drop in because, oh my gosh, camping and being in nature is one of the most spiritual experiences we can have.
Amen, sister.
I'm not going to pack all that stuff. I don't need it. And I have done shamanic ceremonies where the shaman sages all of us, sages the room if it's indoors, and then sings some ethereal music. And that definitely helps move the group. It helped me move into a more trance-like state and helped me settle in. And in that particular ceremony, her voice was a guide throughout the night. Anytime I kind of felt like I was wandering or lost, that voice brought me back and kept me on the path. So I think those are amazing tools to utilize, but to depend on, I just don't feel like it's necessary. And if it's necessary, it's like any other, like we talked about addiction recently. If you have to have some tool or something to get you where you want to be, then you're not utilizing your most important resource, which is inside of you.
Right.
You are your most important resource. You have everything within you to connect with spirit, to attain higher wisdom. And all of those other things are unnecessary.
Right. And the thing that I find interesting about dogma and people's, and I keep using the word incontrovertible because it is the foundation stones of dogma. It's you have to believe this in this religion. It's incontrovertible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think creating an incontrovertible dogma or dogmatic system opens you up to becoming judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your belief says you have to do it this way, then you start becoming judgmental of others who aren't doing it your way. What's your thought?
Exactly. That is exactly my thought, which is, when it comes down to it, was my first issue with religion, was that it had to be this, or Catholicism specifically, because I didn't even know there were others at first. And then I was like, what? There can't be others. This is the only right one. So when we go that way and we think that our way is the only way, or our way is the right way, and too bad for you, you're doing it wrong. That's just silly and unrealistic. Right. And it prevents you from inviting others in to what you feel works for you. Instead you're separating yourself from them and saying, this is the only way, and if you're not doing it my way, you're not doing it right. I mean, how conceited is that?
And now it's time for John Davis's history lesson of religion.
All right.
Well, think about what dogma really is. Dogma is, you have to believe what we say. Mm-hmm. Now, Catholic Church, that's where the Crusades came from. You have to do what we say. You have to do what we believe. That's what the Spanish Inquisition was. That's what the conquering of South and Central America was. That's what all of those horrible things that were done in the name of God were all done because of a dogmatic belief that we are right and you are wrong. Mm-hmm. And to me, when I look at the damage that kind of immovable belief, and so that's kind of the way I look at it, as the best immovable. This is the way it is, and you're done, right? Mm-hmm. And that kind of immovable belief has done more damage to the world and to people personally. You know, you and I call ourselves recovering or recovered Catholics, depending on the day.
Right.
Right. And that the fact that we have to have that thought process means that there was damage done, that there was something that has made us go, well, this isn't right, and I got to get over these beliefs. I have to get over this dogma, right? And so a lot of the like Neil Donald Walsh came out with his Conversations with God, and a lot of his books were, his thoughts were very out there to some people, right? And you know, he himself, there's some things in those books that he himself starts to put foundation stones for dogma in.
Okay.
There are some little spots in there, you know, and there's not a lot, just a few. But it's fun. It's interesting how, what I find, especially in the New Age world, a lot of the New Age people are always looking for the next aha moment. And so they find a practice that seems to be great. They get bored with it. And they find another practice that seems to be great. And they go, oh, this is so much better. Or, oh my God, I finally found it. You know, I know people in my life who they live from aha moment to aha moment. And every moment is like, oh my God, this is it. And I'm like, well, you know, you're doing this new practice now, and you're trying this new thing now, and you're working with the dogma of that. And then you become bored with it because it's not giving you the results that you're looking for. The question is the dogma more a placebo than an actual pathway to something greater?
Yes, because if they're switching from this to that and this to that, then it isn't truly dogma for them, right? And if you go back to Catholicism, the dogma changed when it was convenient for the Catholic Church to change it.
Right. Exactly.
So
there's, as George Carlin once said, there's still people in purgatory doing hell on the doing time on the meat wrap, eating meat on Friday.
Right. So I mean, dogma is this rigid belief system, and I don't personally believe that it serves any. I don't think rigidity serves anyone. Right. Even the trees, the only reason that they can grow so tall and withstand all the winds of the world is that they are flexible. And like a tay in the wind. You remember that movie?
Right. Yeah.
Like, so we too, the more flexible.
Was that Michael? Was that Michael? No, not Michael.
Jodie
that was
Foster.
I
can't remember. Maybe Tess. I don't know. I could be making it up.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, the movie I'm thinking of is Phenomenon with.
Oh, that's another good one.
Oh yeah, really good one. At the end, he's sitting there watching the trees blow in the wind, and he's just feeling that feeling.
Such a good movie.
Anyway, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We got distracted by movie references.
Love them.
Yeah. So if we are so rigid that we're not willing to look at other ideas, other options, that's not life. That's not growth. That's the antithesis of the personal development industry.
Right.
Which is what the New Age, you know, it started as a New Age, and now we just call it personal development or spirituality because it's grown into different branches, and there are so many different explorative paths that we could take now, that if we say that only this one way is the right way, we miss out on so much. And not constantly looking for another aha moment either, because again, those people are looking outside of themselves for what is already present within.
Right. Well, you know, the Transcendental Meditation Movement, TM, was very. It has done a lot of amazing things for people in the world. But I will never forget this one time I was at one of the Renaissance festivals that I did, and there was a guy there who was going to teach Kundalini yoga, and he was going to do some real hardcore, like fire breath and really hardcore yoga. I was really kind of excited to try it. I wanted to, because I was trying everything at that time. And my comedy partner at the time was big into TM. And I found it really interesting is, you know, we're going to do Kundalini yoga. And he says, well, before I do that, hang on. And he left. And he comes back. I said, what'd you do? He says, well, I had to find out whether I could. And then he
Wow.
said, so I had to call the local TM center and talk to a TM instructor to find out whether this was going to mess up my practice.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't think that's what meditation's about, really, and the exploration of self is about. And it really turned me off of TM because of the idea that he didn't get that belief on his own.
Right.
That belief was a dogmatic principle. You have to do
belief
our
was
way of doing it.
installed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it like going, well, I don't, my meditations don't match what TM does because of the way I do it. I don't use a mantra. I use a feeling. And so to me it's really interesting how, unless you're open to exploring all dogma and finding the things that work for you, and then not judging anybody who, if it doesn't work for them, that's fine. I think we all have our own personal pathway, but dogma can be the trap that holds you into one place rather than being broad enough to open your mind to the possibility of something more. And if you're looking for the next aha moment, it's because you're kind of not really incorporating things that work. That was one of the reasons why I stopped speaking at metaphysical centers, because I would go in and I would talk about the things that you and I talk about here, and then I'd come back, 6-7 months later, a year later, and nothing changed. Nobody put anything into practice, and it was just like, they loved hearing me talk, but they weren't putting it into practice. And I was like, well, I'm just a crutch and a piece of entertainment for them, and so I can't continue to do this because it doesn't serve. It's not part of the process. And so I think that dogma in general it can be very destructive, but I think dogma as a parable or metaphor to explain a principle is very useful.
I like the way that you just phrased that. And I think if it's used in that way, then that's beautiful.
Right. The whole idea of cleansing an area with sage beforehand. Now, granted, I like the smell of sage.
Smells nice.
It's like, it's cool, right? And
I use it when my neighbors cook fish and my whole house stinks.
Right, and
I sage the place.
Being a Catholic, a former Catholic, being here in the house Christmas time, I will burn frankincense and myrrh so I can have the Catholic Church smell sometimes.
Nice.
Just because I like the smell of it. I think it's cool. It gives me deep memories of, the hymns and the candles and the church. And, I can't tell you how many midnight masses I did as an altar boy. But, I'm not married to what that means. I'm not married to frankincense and myrrh being a dogmatic thing. It's just a fun memory, right? And it's something that brings back a fond memory and a fun feeling. So I guess to me, dogma is really meant to do that rather than being a structure you have to live by, And when you look at the actual definition, hang on, I can probably look it up. Well, I'll just say it. It is literally a set of principles or incontrovertible truths laid down by a religion that one must adhere to be part of the religion, and all of their ceremonies and traditions are based upon those incontrovertible truths. That's dogma. So I think that God, consciousness, yada yada, it is too big for one religion to encompass. And I think that all of them have their kernels of truth here and there, but it really comes down to us finding the things that are dharmatic rather than dogmatic.
Yes. And I think that's why we're talking about these things every week, because we've found, at least you and I, and probably our listeners, or they wouldn't be listening, have found that one way, the dogma of whichever specific religion, isn't a fit for us. And for me, I'm more eclectic. I pick this or that feels good, that resonates, that feels right to me, this works for me. And so we use the bits and pieces that work for us, but I reject personally the only one way is the right way.
Right.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, again, listeners, we would love to hear from you. So come visit us on Facebook and tell us what you think and what your dogma is, or your Dharma, in fact, and what practices you utilize to help you become receptive to your spiritual practice, whatever that may be. Because what is right for you is, in my belief, what will happen for you. So thank you, Sir Davis, for another enlightening conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Zoner. It's always lovely. I always like hearing your perspective and seeing your smiling face as you share it. So it's awful good.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right, friends. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.